If doom scrolling is an issue in your life, then it's time you take a closer look at who is pulling the strings of your attention. These media companies, they're just data companies. The algorithm is simply a feed of content that you like. Every time you scroll, data. Every time you linger, data. Every time you hit follow, data. In the past, it was more about learning and consuming knowledge. Now it's about learning how to process and synthesize knowledge. And the lack of awareness does not create a neutral state, but rather a vulnerable one. Doom scrolling is simply the latest manifestation of chaos from a power we didn't fully understand. It's a psychological problem made for us, and ironically, made by us. The topic of discussion, the doom scrolling epidemic. Claim number 1. Social media's primary objective is to keep users on the application. Therefore, the doom scrolling epidemic is neither an accident nor a coincidence, but rather a byproduct of success. Because instead of visualizing these companies, whether it's Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, X, as faceless organizations, we have to think of them as groups of people. And without digging into conspiracy theories or mass media control, right? Let's leave all that over there. We got to understand that as a business, their fundamental objective is to keep you on the app. If we think about it, it's called a For You page for a reason. The algorithm is simply a feed of content that you like. It's built on the data that you give it. Every time you scroll, data. Every time you linger, data. Every time you hit follow, data. So at the end of the day, these media companies, they're just data companies. Hence why advertisers work in tandem to create precise marketing campaigns. It's not hard to assume that a For You page starts to pick up data on what's best for you. Which begs the question, what does your For You page look like? And more importantly, how does it make you feel? Because at the end of the day, our For You page is simply a mirror of our habitual emotional preferences. Hence why doom scrolling is so easy to do. It's a psychological problem made for us, and ironically, made by us. Therefore, users must take it upon themselves to monitor their screen time rather than waiting for the organizations to act in defiance of their primary objective. It's a question of responsibility. Whose is it? Now, as I see it, we have two options: accept or reject. Either we blame someone or something else for the circumstances, or we accept what we can control. And that's important. It's not black and white. Just because we accept responsibility for the problem doesn't necessarily mean it's our fault. It just reframes the situation as a problem that can be solved and puts us in an active state rather than a passive victim state of mind. The truth is, as with all major technological advancements, there's always going to be upsides and downsides. And unfortunately, their strength is usually proportional. Using that logic, the downsides of social media can be catastrophic, as we've seen with recent generations, including my own. It is a force of power, but power can be misused. Doom scrolling is simply the latest manifestation of chaos from a power we didn't fully understand. Cyberbullying, doom scrolling, media manipulation, these are all downsides. But social connection, entertainment, education opportunities, business opportunities, these are the upsides. And at the end of the day, we must decide for ourselves to control our consumption habits because no one else is going to do it for you. Therefore, we must choose to either delete social media entirely or accept the responsibility of managing its consequences. Building up the last idea, there is an obvious answer. Similar to most addictions, too much of something is never good. And one of the easiest and proven ways to change behavior is to alter the environment in which the behavior is conducted. For example, social media exists on tech real estate, so to speak. So if monitoring screen time is not an effective solution, delete the platforms for a while and see how you feel without them. Worst case, you download and sign back in, and you're back in the feed. I think too many people overcomplicate things when the solutions are simple. By controlling your digital environment or your home screen, you can influence your own behavior. A better example is dieting. The easiest way to not drink soda, for example, is to not have any soda in your home. Just meal prep, eat from home for 60 days, and don't buy any soda. This way, there's no managing temptations while you're out eating for dinner. There's no having to resist the urge to drink Coke or Dr. Pepper or whatever you're into. By eliminating the possibility of consumption, you You can give your brain the opportunity to rewire itself and reorient your reward loops. Behavioral conditioning 101. Use it if you must. Claim number 2. Attention is one of, if not the, most valuable resource of the 21st century. Therefore, focus is now a skill, not a guarantee. Let's define focus as the ability to intentionally direct and sustain your attention on a chosen task, object, or thought while resisting distractions or competing impulses. In simpler terms, it's concentrated attention. Think of a laser beam. If the beam is spread thin, its concentration is at its lowest. But if each and every light ray is bundled and pointed at a singular point, the concentration would be at its highest. Now, because we live in the 21st century, focus is no longer a guarantee, but rather a skill which must be conditioned and an asset that must be protected. And the skill is twofold in nature. First, you have to have the ability to intentionally direct and sustain your attention, but you also have to have the ability to resist distractions and impulses. The second skill is what I believe most people struggle with. 24/7 notifications, phone calls, text messages, memes, social media, they're all knocking on the doors of our mind, competing for our most valuable resource, our attention. Therefore, focus is now a skill, which makes it a competitive advantage if you have it. Therefore, if we're not directing our own attention, then someone else or something else is. The truth is, thinking is hard, hence why so few engage in it. The skill component of focus is what makes it so rare. It's not given, it's earned. As a result, trends such as self-diagnosing ADHD and doom scrolling plague the world, creating a market opportunity for those who both are willing and are capable of directing one's focus. Because once you learn how to direct yourself, then you can learn how to direct others. This is what it means to lead. But this is also what it means to control. Manipulation and influence are two sides of a very thin line, and it's up to us to discern which is which. Like a magnet, our mind will gravitate towards someone or something. It is in our best interest to discern and strategically choose what that ends up being, because if not, life will happen to us, not for us. The relinquishing of our attention is the relinquishing of influence over ourselves. My advice is to do so sparingly, carefully, and strategically, if at all, or risk being a puppet for someone else's game. Therefore, we must be careful as to what we define as truth. Information is no longer a precious resource. It exists in abundance due to the information flood of the 21st century. So the search for data should no longer be the primary focus of the consumer, but rather the critical analysis of data. Misinformation, skewed data, or fake news, so to speak, plagues our feeds. The reason why focus is so important in this day and age is because we consume data faster than we can process it. And this creates a conundrum. In the past, it was more about learning and consuming knowledge. Now it's about learning how to process and synthesize knowledge. The ability to discern signal from noise is necessary to navigating the world. Therefore, it is better to question everything than to question nothing, because it only takes one weed to disrupt the purity of the garden. Claim number 3, in order to solve a problem, it must be clearly defined. Therefore, I define the first problem as a lack of control over one's behavior, not the behavior itself. If we think about most behaviors, it's the context that provides the grounds for judgment on whether it's, in simple terms, good for you or bad for you. Consumption in moderation is the name of the game. Therefore, it is not scrolling on social media that is inherently evil. It is the lack of control or the compulsive need to do so that creates the issue. Doom scrolling is simply a descriptive term to describe being sucked into the infinite vortex of content. That's all it is. This is important to note because lazy thinkers are usually black and white thinkers. They tend to operate on extremely polar ends of a problem rather than moving towards the gray. But the solution more often than not is found in the gray, considering certain exceptions. I define the second problem as a loss of presence. It's the lack of awareness which creates the conditions for doom scrolling or compulsive behaviors to take place. Like we discussed previously, if you will not direct your own attention, someone else or something else will. And the lack of awareness does not create a neutral state, but rather a vulnerable one. Conscious awareness is similar to guarding the gates of your mind. The lack of awareness is allowing anyone and everyone to trespass and infiltrate your most precious asset. So as a general rule of thumb, if you aren't aware of what you're doing, chaos tends to follow. Lastly, I define the third problem as the unimaginable value social media has brought to the world. As we spoke about earlier, it's not black and white. While social media is an incredible tool, it's also a tremendous force of power, which can have desirable benefits and undesirable consequences. I think it's important to come to terms with this because it allows us to see the problems of the modern world in a healthier light. Problems are like weeds, they will always be around. But rather than centering our focus on the weeds, we must focus on the overall state of the garden. In other words, rather than sitting around and complaining about various issues, we should just pull them out from the root, prune the weeds, and be proud of the garden. This is, and always has been, the way to move forward. So, my final hypothesis: if doom scrolling is an issue in your life, then it's time you take a closer look at who is pulling the strings of your attention. Because as we said earlier, if you aren't, someone else is. And regardless of the answer, the responsibility of any and all consequences falls upon you. Thank you for taking the time to watch today's episode. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace. Oh, come here. Oh. Hey, come here, Rafa. Come here, up. Rafa, up. Tell them to subscribe. Or you'll bite them.